Welcome to another episode of Connect, where we go beyond Sunday by integrating the Word of God to real life issues. And today, in this program, we will be introducing a series on emotions. And we begin by focusing on anger as a human emotion.
Yes.
Welcome, Winnie, to Connect.
Thank you very much.
I am smiling, but we are talking about anger.
Yes, we don't want to be angry.
We don't want to be angry
when we are talking about anger.
when we are talking about anger.
Yes.
And many times when we talk about anger, people, first of all, don't appreciate anger
Yes.
as an emotion. People have labeled. There are people who have been labeled, or even people who label themselves.
Angry.
I can get angry, and they can threaten you.
Yes.
You know, I can easily get angry. In fact, the other day I was even thinking, there are even communities we stereotype
Sadly.
and say, you know, those people, they get angry quickly or easily.
So don't hang around them.
Yeah, or they have anger issues.
Yes.
And so we don't want to stay around or hang around people with anger issues. Again, the other thing I've seen, the other perspective I've seen, just in terms of introducing this topic, is where we want to deal with the other person's anger.
Yes.
And so when we talk about anger, people think, or somebody quickly thinks, we are talking about managing that other person or managing other people, not myself.
Yes, sure, yeah.
But here we are.
And it seems as much as we want to avoid the topic of anger, we all get angry. As much as we really don't like talking about it, we don't like it, but somehow we all get caught up with anger. Yes.
And the other people will say, I don't get angry easily.
Easily, yes.
Maybe that could mean something else. Maybe they could be meaning that I have either managed my anger, not that necessarily they don't get angry.
Yes, they know how to handle it.
But maybe they have known how to handle it, because there are many things to get you angry.
Yes, and the worst, I think, bit of all those is the people who suppress anger, because we've been trained to think that anger is not a good thing. So many of us, when we feel angry, we try to suppress it inside. And we keep on suppressing, but with time it boils out. And it comes in like hot, is it volcano?
Volcano.
Yes, burning everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, whether you have outward bursts of anger,
or
you suppress it, none of you is really doing the right thing.
Yes.
In terms of appreciating anger as an emotion that has a place in an individual, just like any other kind of emotions that we have. And I think one of the things that we must bring at the onset is that really our emotions are signals.
Yes, they are signals.
They are supposed to be signals.
Yes, they are signals. They tell us where something is wrong and that you need to attend to something. But the problem is because I think the knowledge we have about our emotions is that, first of all, we don't like emotion issues. And I think sometimes men say emotions are women issues. Just let women handle emotions.
Yes.
And then the other, again, now for the women who really trying to be not really women-like, so we suppress emotions. So there's a lot of confusion about emotions, but the truth is we can't run away. At some point we are all angry. At some point we fear. All those emotions come to us. I think then the best thing to do is we need to understand so that we deal with it. Yes.
Yeah, and when we talk about emotions as signals, as you've rightly put it, these signals are meant to help us interpret some things that are happening, so that the issue is not the emotion.
Yes.
It's the signal is sending some message. You know, when you're hungry, or rather when you're feeling hungry, the feeling is not the issue.
Yes.
Is that the
message is
your stomach is empty
food.
and it needs food.
Yes.
Or sometimes when we are anxious, it may mean there is something that is unsettling.
Yes.
that we need to deal. You know, I'm imagining if we didn't have emotions, you know, so you didn't know when you're happy.
And when you're sad.
When you're sad, you didn't know when something offends you. You are not able to tell when something you don't like it, you know, or something is even causing you pain.
Pain, yes. I think
something,
then we will cease to be human.
you know, we would cease to be human, because how do we interact with ourselves, interact with our environment, and interact with others in the absence of emotions?
I think life will be so blunt. That means also with the absence of emotion, you can't taste even good food. So it will be like, you can imagine the time when you have not, when you're sick and your taste buds are not well.
Yes.
And every food you eat is just blunt. I think that's how life would be without emotions. Yes.
But just to help our listeners and our viewers appreciate, we could probably start by defining when we talk about anger, really. And I think we've already mentioned that it's a feeling, but you can pick it up in terms of just a quick definition, and then we look at what are some of those causes, because we are saying it's a signal.
Yes,
it's a signal. It signals that something, it's a trigger, something has triggered in our system that we probably need to respond to.
It's true.
And I know at some point we will be talking about that as we continue with the program.
Yeah, so I think let's borrow from psychology and think about anger. It's a natural and automatic response to pain. And you see, pain, there are two things. There's a physical pain and emotional pain. So we are so familiar with physical pain. When something pricks you, you know the physical pain. So anger is a response to emotional pain. Yeah, it's a response. Yes, it's a signal that something has been triggered somewhere. You need to watch. Yeah.
So it's something that comes out naturally.
It is automatic and natural, and it's a signal. So I think the thing is we need to just learn to listen to it, not react to it. Yes. Yeah.
And when we're talking about some causes of anger, is when we are talking of, again, as you're saying, it's a trigger. So something has happened.
Yes.
Whether physical
or
emotional. And then it triggers.
Anger.
It triggers what you're calling that natural signal.
Yes.
To say, to warn you, to call to your attention.
Yes.
To something that you need to respond to. And, you know, there are things that can cause us or can trigger those feelings. And they are within us.
Yes.
Some are without. But some are within.
Most of them are within, because most of the other things, in fact, the things that triggers is your response to other issues. You know, anything outside you is just neutral. It is how you respond to it that creates the problems or the goodness. You like something because of the way you respond. That's why there are people who love flowers, and there are people who meet flowers and they didn't even notice. It is just you and your response system. So we said anger, first of all, is not a primary emotion. It is secondary. We said it's saying something. Either it's telling you sadness, like now when we talk about, I think, grieving process. I think at some point in the grieving process, from sad, when you're feeling sad, at some point it changes even into anger. You start feeling like maybe somebody caused this person to die. So it can be a response to sadness. It can be a response to feeling rejected. You feel rejected. When you're hungry, like when you belong to a group, then people just shut you off. People are not picking your call. You feel rejected by a group. What do you feel? It is the rejection. The problem here is rejection.
Okay.
But what is coming out is anger. Why didn't pastor call me? Why are they not calling me anymore? Don't they love me anymore? But it's coming as anger. But deep inside, actually, what you're feeling is a feeling of rejection. So you see how it is two-faced. It has two. It is the outward expression of something inside.
And you see, then when it comes to response, and we will talk about that, I think this is very important. Understanding that, one, it is not a primary emotion.
Yes.
It is a signal. It could be talking about something deeper.
Yes.
And I think it could also be talking about not necessarily the person who may have caused, but really the perception, what you have already built and you are feeling about yourself.
Yes.
So that, you know, as you're saying, somebody doesn't greet you. And then you think that nowadays people are not greeting me because they don't like me, or there is something they're thinking about.
And then suddenly you are hungry.
And then suddenly you're
hungry.
And the person is not the issue. Maybe they
don't know.
They have nothing to do with
maybe they just didn't
what you're
see
feeling,
you on the street.
you know. Or and even the greetings, the not being greeted is not the issue. There is already an underlying emotional issue
in you
that is already in you.
It's true.
And now the anger comes out as a signal that you really need to be thinking about that particular issue and isolating it from the person and the activity to be able to deal with it. You know, talking about when one feels that is not well treated, and maybe somebody feeling rejected, threatened. And so you are seeing this in every person, in every activity, and it is demonstrated by your anger. That is towards people.
And I think also that also calls us, even as Christians now, to be more sensitive to people. Actually, when we're dealing with an angry person, we just don't need to label them angry. In fact, I think the anger also, we should be aware that this person is actually, there's a call for help. They need some help. There's something deeper. Sometimes they don't know. But now when we box them and say, that person is so angry, we now create even more problems. So that's why some people now end up feeling very isolated, very disconnected and sad and lonely, and leading to so many other things. I think we need now to be more compassionate about people, because we know we don't like angry people. We just say, when watu wasira, we don't like them. So we need to be also compassionate, knowing that there's something they are dealing with.
Okay.
And sometimes they are not even aware.
And I think that is a very profound point, because many times, of course, when we talk about conflict, many times we will talk about avoidance, or we talk about fighting, or we talk about flight in terms of responding. And it's common even to things, to something like anger. When you realize that this person, you know, as you're saying, you've labeled somebody as angry, then one of the natural tendencies is to keep away. Keep away, avoid them, don't get on their path, you know, don't engage them, you know, you have limited time with them. But what you're telling us today is that not only for ourselves, because really we are focusing on self. We are not focusing on just managing other people's anger. But you're telling us that even for us, especially as brethren, we should be able to pick that as a signal, as a cry,
a cry
that somebody actually needs help.
It's true.
And I think now when it comes to the individual, then I should be able to, if I take time to analyze myself, have an introspection, time to just examine myself. When I see this kind of signal, I probably also need to take note that I probably need help.
Yes, it's true.
And instead of labeling myself as well, and accepting and saying, you know, I don't like jokes.
If you come
I get angry very quickly. I should be able to say, there is a signal here that I have observed in different occasions. And that signal is telling me that something is wrong. Or even when I hear other people telling me, by the way, you really get angry. Why do you get angry? Some people get angrier.
And I think the easiest way of doing angry people is what we call road rage. In the road, somebody just cuts you off and suddenly you are angry. Imagine you've not thought about, why were they rushing? Could they have a sick baby? Could they have some sad news? Are they late for an appointment? Maybe it's an interview. But you see the idea that suddenly you just caught road rage.
Sparked.
Yes, it means really it is not about the person who cut you. It is more of, as we said, something that needs to be addressed in you. Yeah, why are you easily provoked? Maybe it's just a competition issue. You feel like somebody just decided to cut you, and maybe it's some problem of competition. You're just feeling like people are not respecting my position or something. So it is something, as you said, anger is, the problem with anger, it's hidden. It is a signal, but what it is telling you, it requires a bit of introspection.
And that example really opens up that there are so many mirrors that can help us examine ourselves on matters to do with anger and be able to spot that signal. And I think that example of the road is one of them. I think when it also comes to couples, when it comes to couples or even in a family setting, where you are always angered by small things in the house.
Yes, how the toothpaste.
Yeah, those are some of the things that couples will struggle with.
Yeah.
And they quickly spark you up. And people cannot have peace simply because you have showed up. And so what we are saying, there are so many available avenues that can help you notice your anger issues and notice that you actually need help or you are calling out for help. And so we are saying that anger as an emotion is not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing.
What we do, and we will be talking about that in the next episode, how then we respond to anger will then determine what good it will produce that will come out of it.
Yes, true. And I think, as you said, respond. Because I think in most cases we react. When we feel angry, we react. And I think, as you pointed out clearly, is that once we learn to deal and work with anger, we will learn to respond to it. Just understanding, what is it telling me? What do I need? We are not saying it is easy. We are not saying it will come easily. It will not just be instant answers, but it requires you to be aware and start understanding yourself more deeply to be able to handle issues like anger.
And you know, then the other aspect is how we connect anger and our thought pattern.
Yes.
The things that we think about. And that is very important. Again, just underlining the fact that this is a signal. And what it triggers, that signal tells us what we are supposed to be dealing with. Because there is also the issue of anger and our thoughts and the things that we think about. I don't know whether you want to say something about that before we ask ourselves, does God get angry?
Does he?
That's a good question that we'll be asking ourselves in a moment.
Yes. So anger, we've said, is not a primary emotion. It is associated with the feeling of pain, and most of the time it is physical and emotion. And some of the things that anger is actually, the signals they point to things like sadness, shame, anxiety, guilt, sadness. So all those things are actually what the anger is pointing. And those are the things that needs to be dealt with, not the anger itself.
Not the anger itself. Yeah. So the anger remains
a signal.
That means something deeper needs to be dealt with. That somebody needs to look at it. So this will call for, looking at personal assessments. Some of the thoughts that can activate anger include personal assessments, things like personal assumptions, and hence the reason why you need to have self-awareness, a sense of self-awareness. Again, the emphasis for me really from today's Connect is that don't just think about dealing with other people's anger. Think about dealing with your anger, because you need to be able to evaluate how often do I get angry? What are those things that trigger me to anger? Of course, people will ask about, there are people who talk about holy anger. Say we have righteous anger. And they make reference to God in terms of anger. And the question is, does God get angry? And the answer is actually yes.
Oh, it
He
does.
does. He does. But number one, God gets angry. He gets angered by sin. His nature is not a nature of anger. His anger is not like our anger, where we are struggling with issues of sin or fallenness
Yeah.
that trigger our anger. His is triggered or provoked by his righteousness. And when you look at Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16 to 19, it tells us that these things, 6 things, the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. And then he lists them, says a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. Things that God hates.
Yeah.
And when we are doing them, we are engaging in them, we are actually inviting God's anger. We are inviting God's wrath. And again, it is important to know that his wrath is actually on sinners, upon sinners. And I'll be talking about that in a moment. But secondly, inasmuch as God is angered by sin, there is a very interesting characteristic about him, is that God is slow
To anger.
to anger. If God was to be quick to anger like some of us are, no one will survive.
Surely
Even the earth, the world, and everything in it will not survive.
Yeah.
But inasmuch as he is provoked to anger by our sinfulness, and when you read the Bible, really look, for example, looking through Judges, you will see God gets angry because of the sins of his people. They provoke him to anger, and because of that, he pronounces judgment on them, but then he forgives them.
Yeah.
Because he's slow to anger.
Yeah.
He's having this conversation with Moses, and he's saying he's slow to anger, but quick in terms of forgiving. And Psalms 103, verse 8 tells us that the Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in love. And so when we are thinking about our own anger, and we think of it from the perspective of God, we should learn from him that is actually slow in terms of anger. But then number 3, God's response to anger is redemption. Because remember, his anger is provoked by sin. Hence John 3:16 telling us, for God so loved the world. Though he had every right, he is angered with every right to remain angered by the sin of the world. We see him instead demonstrating love.
Yeah.
And then now sending his son. And so what God really did on the cross is that he took his wrath, he took his anger, and he poured it on his son, Jesus Christ. So that then when we believe in that finished work of Christ on the cross, that anger doesn't fall on us.
We are reconciled.
We are redeemed. We are reconciled to God. And so, very important, yes, God gets angry, not his nature, but because of his righteousness. But he's also slow to anger and more abounding
In love.
in terms of love. And also his response really is a redemption. And in the next episode, we will be looking at then how do we respond.
Yeah.
I think you already intimated that it's not reacting, but responding.
Yeah.
How do we respond? Meanwhile, may you think about your anger and start looking at the mirrors that are around you to help you evaluate yourself and assess where you stand at in terms of dealing or responding to anger. This has been Connect, where we go beyond Sunday. God bless you.